if we are talking about JavaScript promises, it's more like, okay, that promises is more like, okay, a kind of relationship between the front end and the back end, right? Whereas there's some information somewhere, right, where you create a function that is going to pick that information, and after picking the information, now there are two things involved. It's just like you send somebody on an errand. Maybe you tell the person, go to the market and get me a blue shirt, right? Now there's a possibility that maybe you ask the person to bring a particular color of blue shirt, let's say sky blue. So in that situation, you are expecting two replies from the person. It's either you are expecting to see the blue shirt, the sky blue shirt, or you are expecting to get a message from the person tell you that I can't find any sky blue shirt in the market. So that's more like promises. So you are creating a function, and what that function is doing is accommodating another function that is trying to get information somewhere, and that information is getting, you are expecting two things from that function that's getting that information. You are expecting it to return back the result of whatsoever thing is going to get back to you, or you are expecting it to send back a message that I couldn't get this thing. So in a situation where it sends back the result you are expecting, that means you are expecting a value. And in a situation where he sends back this thing, sends a message tell you that this thing is not available, you are expecting an error. So that is what promises is all about. So now the first thing we have here on our curriculum, please, if there's anywhere maybe you are not you don't understand, you can always like unmute and then ask and all that before we go far. So now we'll look at, these are the most important things I find out under ES6 promises. We have creating a promise and we have consuming a promise. So now in creating a promise, you always use the keyword new. In fact, anytime you are creating an object, be it a map, be it a promise, be it whatsoever, you always use, even if it's an object you are creating from a class, you always use the keyword new. So use new, then promise. Now the promise will start from capital letter P. Then the promise is taking in two parameters, which is the resolve or the reject. Now in this situation, let's say I have const promise, right? And then I want to create a promise. Now it's taking in two parameters, which is resolve or reject. Now these two parameters, you can name it anything you want to. It mustn't be resolve and reject. You can name it anything you want, but it's just that because of for consistency's sake, it's best to use resolve and reject. Now it's not by force, or it's not compulsory for you to have two of these parameters. Let's say now you want to do a promise that only resolves. In that case, you don't need this reject. You can just use this resolve. And maybe you want to build a promise that only rejects, it doesn't resolve. You don't need the resolve. You can just use reject. And if you want to build a promise that does both, either it resolve the promise or it rejects it, you can now use both of them, resolve or reject. So now what do? We return a function, because actually this is a function. The promise takes in a function. So what are we going to do now, or what do we want to do? What we want to do is to resolve. In this particular promise, what we want to do is to resolve. So we call the keyword resolve. And what are we resolving? Let's say we want to resolve 2. That's what we want to resolve. So now this is how you create a promise. This is one way of creating a promise. The second way of creating a promise is by making use of the Promise API, which is Promise.resolve. Now let's say what we want to do, because if you check here we are creating a promise, and the promise, we are resolving the promise with a value of 2. So if we want to create a similar thing using the Promise API, what we are going to do, let's call this one const promise 2. Promise.2. So here now, this one now is going to be Promise.resolve, and then we'll give it the value of 2. Right? So now let's do something. Let's console log this promise and also this promise and see what we are going to have. So console.log promise, right? And then the next one, console.log promise2. So now I don't know, are you guys still hearing me?
Yeah.
Good. So I don't know, do you guys understand now? Yeah? So do you guys understand now? So
Yeah, we're catching up.
okay.
Yeah, we're getting you.
Okay. So this is one way to create. This one is creating a promise that resolve. Why this one is also creating a promise that resolve. So let's say we want to create another promise, but this time around we are creating and just like if you remember what I said, since here we are just resolving, we are not rejecting. We can just remove this resolve and leave we can remove the reject, because since what we are doing is we are resolving, we can remove the reject and leave it this way. It's going to work. But me, I still like, even if I'm not using the reject, I still like leaving it this way, so that it will register in my brain that this one actually takes normally 2 parameters, which is the resolve and the reject. So let's say now we want to create a promise that rejects, right? Let's use the first way. So we have const, this one, let's name it promise3. Promise3 equal to, you still use the keyword new, then the keyword promise. Now, of course, remember, it will take in our 2 parameter, resolve and then reject, right? Then this one we take in a function. You know, remember we treated arrow function yesterday, so that's why I'm not actually going into depth to explain this. So what we want to do is to reject. Now, if you want to reject a promise, right, they always advise that you should reject it using an error, because you can reject it using normal number. Like now I can decide to put reject and put 6 here, you understand? But it's always advised to reject it using an error. So here inside of reject, I'm going to call an error, right? And to create an error, I'm going to use the keyword new error, because in this case now error is like an object, and then I'll pass into it the object, which is what? Rejected. Let me just put promise, the error message, promise rejected. Right? So if we want to like create maybe another promise, let's say promise4, using this API, promise API. Now this time around we have const promise4, and then we are going to have the promise dot reject. And just like I say, here is best you pass in an error. So we have new error, promise4 is rejected. So now if we console log these 2 promises, that's promise3 and promise4, console.log promise3, and then we also have console.log promise4. So now do you see what we have? Promise rejected. What is the error message? Promise rejected, which is for this one we created here. Why for this one we created here? Now you can see the error message is promise4 is rejected, so you can see it here, rejected, promise4 is rejected. So this is the way you can use to create a promise. And if you remember what I told you that a promise is just like a middleman, right? It's a function that maybe you want to get an information from an API, so he goes there to get that information, and then he's now coming back with a reply, and the reply you are expecting from it is either a reply that is telling you that I was able to resolve it, and after resolving it, this is the value you are expecting. Or sorry, I couldn't resolve it, your request has been rejected, and now this is the reason why your result have been rejected. So when a promise is resolved, you get a value which signifies success. When a promise is rejected, you get an error message showing you why your request was rejected. So that is the whole, not the whole picture. I wouldn't say the whole picture, but that's actually what I understand from the aspect of promises in JavaScript. Remember, if you promise somebody something, there are two possibilities. You either fulfill the promise or you fail. You understand? So in a situation where you fulfill the promise, it means you are going to give the person, let's say you promise the person to buy maybe a programming book, right? There are two options. Either you fulfill the promise by giving the person the book, or you fail the promise by trying to explain to the person, maybe you don't have the time, or you don't have the money, or you couldn't get the book you are looking for, something like that. So that is just the whole, or the like summary of what promises are in JavaScript. So I don't know, does anybody have a question before we move on?
It's still not too clear though, but I'll take my time to study.
Okay. So what about the rest?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I'm still good.
Okay. So let me go over it once again, so that, before, one thing with repetition is repetition sometimes strengthen one's understanding. So that's why sometimes it's good you repeat things over and over again. So now the whole aspect of promise, let me use it in a normal work scenario. Normally, if you have a back end and a front end, the front end, the data you display on the front end are the data you normally fetch from the back end, right? Let's say now you want to get the names of employers in a company, right, from the front end. Of course, you are getting that information from a database, and that database is connected to the back end, isn't it? So now let's say you want to create a function, or you want to code it, you want to create a code that will help you do that, right? Now in JavaScript, that code that can help you do that is what we normally refer to as promises, right? So that code is more like standing as, okay, if you remember APIs, we used to say, okay, the back end is the kitchen, the front end is the restaurant, right? And the servers, that's those that serve the food, are the API, right? It's more like they are the ones that go to the kitchen, fetch the food, and then bring it to you, the customer, which is at the front end. So these promises now are functions that actually go to that back end. Check for what you are requesting. Let's say you are requesting for an employer with an ID of maybe 39, right? So if you want to do that, you need to write a promise. So after writing a promise, now of course you are not the person that designed the back end, and even if you are the person that designed the back end, you don't know if maybe user 39 has decided to delete his information or not, because just like Facebook and other social media, you can actually delete your account, in that even if somebody come and search for your account, he will not find it again. Why? Because the account have been deleted. So you don't really know that whether the owner that has ID of 39 has removed his information from the backend, has deleted it or not. So but you want to create a function that somebody can actually go and find the customer with ID 39 anytime. So it means you have to consider two things. And what are the two things you have to consider? Is either you consider success in terms of it was able to find ID 39, or you come across with failure, which is what? Unable to find ID 39. So now that function that can help you is what is called promises. So it means anytime you are creating or building a promise, you have to consider two things, which is either the promise will be resolved, which shows it was successful, and in that situation it will return a value for you, because just like this one, once it's successful, of course what you are expecting is information about user 39, user ID 39. That's what you'll be expecting, right? Why in a situation of failure, that's a situation that you can't find a user ID 39. In that situation, of course, what you are expecting is an error. So that's why if you want to create a promise, let's say the promise I want to create now, just like I say, const user, right? User ID 39. Right? Now to get this.
So can I?
Okay, please go on.
Which one is more useful between promises and async await?
Sir, sorry, like, can you be more audible?
Like, which one is more useful to catch the API between
Okay,
promises?
yes,
Consider
promises. Yes, when it comes to
with-
API,
okay.
because just like I told you guys, I was speaking with a front end lady today, and then she was telling me how she often use promises a lot to get information from the back end. You understand that that's what she used to handle information from the back end. So it was then that I realized, okay, so this is actually one of the use of promises, to fetch information from the back end. You understand? So, and if you are fetching information from the back end, you can't be too sure whether that information is there or not. So that's where the issue of resolve or reject. That's, if is your request resolved, you get a value. Is it rejected, you get an error. So I don't know, have that answered your question?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So now what we are expecting here is user ID 39, a promise for user ID 39. Now to create a promise, I showed you two ways of creating a promise. So the first way, I said you use the keyword new, then the word promise. So now this new promise is taking in two parameters, which is either is successful, which in this case it will get resolved, or is either is not successful, which in this case it means your request is rejected. Now this promise will actually process what? A function. Now what is it going to process? That's what I want to put inside this block of code. Now of course what I want this promise to do is to resolve, and this resolve, now what it should return to me is that it should return successfully found, or search successful, search, or user ID 39 found. User ID 39 is found. Right? So this one I'm just giving a scenario. Now for if it's being resolved, you have to call this keyword resolve. You have to call this keyword to show that okay, it has actually been resolved, so that is my search or my request is successful. Right? So now if we now type user ID 39, you can see is returning a promise. And what is the promise is returning? Is returning that okay, your user ID 39 is found. So it means this promise was a success. Now let's say we want to now create another promise, but this time around we want to create a promise that will show that the search was not successful. So let's make it const. This time around, let's say user ID let's say minus 39. Of course, you can't have ID with number 39. Let me use underscore. Okay, enter. Let me just put 100 equal to. So let's say we don't have user ID 100. Now what I want to do here is to create a promise, but this promise I want to create, I want to reject it. I don't want to resolve it. I want to reject it instead. So here now, of course, I'll use new promise, and then of course, I told you I like taking in the two parameters, resolve, reject, and then I'm going to return a function. What am I returning? I want to return that it has been rejected. But now, just like I say, they always advise that if you are rejecting a request or you are rejecting inside of a promise, it's best your reject should be returning an error and not just a message. Because if I like, I can still give this one a message. I can say user ID 100, right? User ID 100 not found, right? And then by the time I call this user ID 100, you see what do we have here? Rejected, user ID 100 not found. So you can still pass message into the reject. It will still show you as the reject message. But they always encourage or advise that instead of you just passing a message, it's good you pass it as an error, right? So now you can see it's now telling us that it's actually an error. If you check what we did initially, right? If I do Control Z, you can see that it's not showing us, it's just showing us rejected, but it's not showing us that is an error. So, but if we now, once we now include our error, right? Look at it. So here is now showing us that it's rejected, and this is actually the error. What is the error? User ID 100 not found. So, and just like I say, the alternative way of doing this, right, is just by using the Promise API. And how do you use the Promise API? To resolve any function or to resolve any value, it's just for us to use Promise.resolve. We don't need to use this new keyword. We'll remove the new keyword. And then this one too, what we just need to do is just to use Promise.reject, and then we'll remove this new. So either you create a promise using this method, .reject, .resolve, .resolve to show that it has been resolved, .reject to show that it has been rejected, or you create it using the other one. So now you only do this when you are very sure that irrespective of what, your request will always be resolved. That's when it's proper to use something like this. Or irrespective of your request is going to be rejected, okay, that's when you can use something like this. But in a situation where you want to give both a chance, that's when best is to use this other one that has new promise, right? And what is the promise? Resolve, reject. Then in this case, you can now pass in a function that will now say resolve 2, right, or 20, or reject. In this time around, you use comma. If you are using the 2, you use comma to differentiate them, or reject. Then this one will return an error message. I no see am. So I don't know, do you guys get what I'm saying? Do you get the like overview of Promise? So now let's look at this first task here, right? It says keep every promise you make and only make promises you can keep. So here they say return a promise using the prototype this. And then this was, so I will copy this, their code test, and then I'll go and copy the function prototype they gave us, which is this. So they say we should return from the function, isn't it? So now if you look at the question, return a promise, they did not say whether successful, whether the promise should be successful or it should not be successful. They just say we should return a promise. Now from here, inside this function, we will now return new promise. You know, this is one way of generating the promise. And then of course I told you guys you have resolve. So this one we can use only resolve if we want, but we can include the rest with the reject too if we want. And then we want to return something. Now what are we returning? They did not tell us what to return. They just say we should just return a promise. So me, I'll just resolve, maybe I'll just resolve 0. And then you can see what is trying to say here. Now they are now saving the value of what is coming from this function. They are storing it inside of response. And then once they console log the response instance of promise, they are checking, is this response I'm getting from this function, is it a response from a promise? If yes, send me true. So that's why here you are seeing is giving us true, because it's actually what this function is giving is actually a promise. Now either you go by this way, or if you want to go by the other way, the second method of generating a promise, remember what we will do. Const promise will be equal to promise.resolve. Let's resolve maybe 20 this time around, right? And then let's return the promise. So what do you see here? True. So just like I said, you must not resolve. You can as well reject too, because they were ALX were not successful. We are not specific, sorry. So even if you reject, look at what it's showing, you still get true. So that is what they just wanted us to do in this task. So do you guys get it?
Yeah.
So now let's look at the second one. So the second one, it says don't make a promise if you know you can't keep it. And then we have, using the prototype below, return a promise. The parameter is a boolean. So you can see this one is taking a parameter, isn't it? This is the function and it's taking a parameter, success. Now let's see, they say when the argument is true, resolve what? The promise by passing what? An object with 2 attributes, status 200, body success. And if it's false, reject the promise with what? An error object with what? The message, the fake what? API is not working currently. Then they now say try testing it out for yourself. So this is the test, what they use in testing. So I'll copy it, then I'll come to this one, I'll paste it here. Then let me go back. What is the function they say we should use? This is the function they say we should use this time around. So I'll copy it as well, and then I'll put it here. Then remember to put your function at the front. So now this is our function. So let's first do it using the first method. So how do we do the first method? We'll return new promise. Remember, this promise is taking in what? Resolve and reject. And then of course from there we'll run a function. Now look at what they said. They were specific in the instruction. It's taking in an argument which is success, and they say when the argument is true, resolve the promise by passing an object with 2 attributes, status 200, body success. So let's go back to our code. So now we'll now check if success, of course we are software engineers, so we don't need to do this, you understand, by simply just saying if this one will translate to true. It's always carry on if success, if what is here is true. So but if you are confused, you can still use equal to true, but I'll leave it this way. So if success, now look at what did they ask us to do. If it's success, they say when the argument is true, they say what? Resolve the promise. So here we'll now come and do resolve. But remember, they say we should resolve with a particular value. And what is the value? By passing an object with 2 attributes. So you remember an object in JavaScript. What is an object in JavaScript? This, how you start an object. Now, what is the object they say we should pass? They say status should be what? 200. And then the next one is what? They say body should be success. So body should be success. And then the next one, what did he say? If it's false, of course, if it's not true, definitely to be false. So I'll add my else here. So else, what should he do? What did he say? Reject the promise with an error object. So you see, they were specific. You know, I told you, once you are creating an object in JavaScript, you have to use the keyword new, because sometimes that used to be confusing, right? Where somebody will say, why must I be using new? Why must I be using new? So while you are creating a new object, it has to be, you have to use the keyword new if you are creating an object. So now this is the message we'll pass into the error object you are creating. So coming back to else now, what are we doing? We'll reject. That's if it's not successful. And what are we passing in? New error. And what is the error message? This is the error message. Now, coming back to this, you see, when they pass in true, of course, if it's true, this is what we are expecting. We are expecting it to be resolved by returning an object of status and body. Now, look at it. For this first one now, we did, which we passed in true. Look at what we got. We got a promise of an object that have status of 200 and body of success. Now, for the second one, we call the function again. This time around, we pass in false. Of course, if it's false, what we are expecting is a rejection, is a reject with an error message of this. So, which is, you see what we have here, a promise having being rejected with an error message of this. So are we clear?
Yeah, it's very clear.
Okay, good. So let's look at the third one. Now the third one says, catch me if you can. So before we go to the third one, let's look at how can we achieve this using the second method. If you remember, you know, we have always been using two methods to create promise, right? So if we want to use the second method now, it's very easy. Now what are we going to do? This time around, we'll say if success, right? Then what are we going to call? We are going to return Promise.resolve. And what are we resolving? Remember, they say we should pass in an object with status of what? 200. And then a body of what? Success. Good. Then else, what did they say we should do? They say we should return an error, right? A reject. So we'll return Promise.reject to show that the promise has been rejected, and then we'll pass in our error. So our error object, new error, and then our error message, which is what? Okay, it's still here. The fake API is not currently working. Now what do you see? For this one we called, you can see what we have. Status 200, body success. While for this second one we called, you can see what we have. It's being rejected. And what is the error message? The fake API is not working currently. So you can always use either that first method or this second method, depending on which one you prefer working with. So let's look at this second one. It says, using the function prototype below, which is this, of course, append 3 handlers to the function. When the promise resolves, return an object with the following attributes. This. When the promise rejects, return an empty error object. So it should return an error object, but it should be empty. It should not carry any message. Then for every resolution, log what? Got a response from what? API. Now, if you check the notes I put down, you can see that I talked about creating a promise, which is what we just finished now. Creating a promise. So now what we are entering is consuming a promise. And if you are consuming a promise, there are 3 methods you use in consuming a promise. There's the then method, there's the catch method, and there's the finally. Now let's go back to let's compare this one with what we have here. Look at what they say. We have a function, but this function is accepting a promise. So that is already what is being passed into this function is already a promise that's passed into it. So what we are handling a promise. If you remember these first two, what we are doing is we are creating a promise. We are not handling a promise because we are not getting any promise from anywhere. But if you look at this second one, the game has changed. What we are expecting inside this function now is a promise. That is to say, they have created the promise already. And that's why if you check here, you find out that here they created a promise with an empty value. That's why you are seeing this Promise.resolve. And here they are now passing that promise into this function. So what they want us to do is now to handle this promise. And how do we handle promise? Just like I said, we handle promise with these three methods. Now let's look at the progression of work. They say when promise resolves, return an object with the following attributes. Now anytime you are dealing with promise that is being resolved, you always use the then method. That's the method that catches any promise that is being resolved. Then look at the second one. It says when the promise rejects, return an empty error object. Anytime you want to deal with any promise that has been rejected, you always use the catch method. Then finally, they now say for every resolution, right, log got a response from API. So what they mean by this third one is whether is a success or is a failure, that is whether the promise is being resolved or is being rejected, still print out got a response from the API. So in that kind of case, the method you use is this one called finally. So now let's do this. Now I'm going to copy this one, our test code, paste it here, and then this one is supposed to be where our function will come in. So let me copy the function. Good. So now looking at what we have here, we are expecting a promise from here, right? And just like I said, or just like I explained using this one, I say for you to get the resolution of a promise, you use then. For you to get the rejection, use catch. And for you to print out any message, irrespective of whether it has been rejected or resolved, use finally. So coming into our function now, it says when the promise resolves, return an object with the following attribute, this. So now we'll come back to our code. We'll say promise, remember, is a what? Is a method, and you know you call method on an object. So the object already has been given, passed in as a parameter as promise. So we'll check promise dot then. Now what did they say we should do? They say we should pass in what? An object. So, and what is the object they say we should pass in? Status is 200, body is success, right? Now this is for the dot then. Now okay, what if the promise, right, did they say we should return? Let me be sure. Okay, they say return. So since they say we should return, that means I have to make this one into a function, an arrow function. So I will have this. I hope I'm not making any mistake here. I'm coming. Let me check something. Okay. Okay, no problem. Let me remove this. Then here, what I'm going to do, I'll return it from here instead, right? And then this then, let me take it to the next line. The reason why I took it to the next line is that I want it to be organized. So this then is to handle when it has been resolved. Now the next thing, they ask us to If it's being rejected, we should return empty error object. Now remember what I told you about rejection. You use the catch method. So now what we are going to do here is that the next one now we are going to have is dot catch. And then what did they say we should return? They said we should return an empty error, right? So we have new error, and then it's going to be empty. We'll not put anything inside. Then they say irrespective of what happened, whether it has been resolved or rejected, we should return back a message. So that's where dot finally comes in. So finally, what did they say we should do? Where is it? They say got a what? Response from the API. So we'll paste it here. So what do we have? This one is showing promise pending. I don't know why it's showing pending. It's supposed to show this one. What is the name? Got a response from the API. Although if you run it on the terminal, this one that's what is going to print out for you. But I don't know why on this one it's not like showing that. So maybe what we'll do, right? Let me try and console log it. Console.log. Let me try and console log it and see if it will work. Yes, so you see it actually work, which is got. Because I remember while I was testing it, so I don't think the thing printed out. It just showed this promise pending. So it was until when I now included console log, so to show me what it is about. So this is how you consume a promise. So I don't know if you guys like understand.
I do.
Okay. So what about the rest? Isn't everybody's mic is just off?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Okay.
That's good. So that's it. So always remember, I don't mind. I can actually copy this and put it on the group if you guys will need it.
I'll need it.
I can do that.
Okay.
I'll just copy it. I'll copy it to the group. So that is when you are dealing with consuming a promise. So let's look at the next question. It says handle multiple successful promises, right? So they say in this file import upload photo and create user from utils.js. So it means there's a file they provided to us called utils.js. I think is on top, but if I'm not, yes, this is it. This is the file here. These are the two files. So since we are using them, I'll just copy them, take to our terminal playground. So I'll just bring it here. Then let's go back. So it says, okay, this and this. Then I'll say knowing that the functions in utils.js return promises. You know, this one we just finished now is just a single promise they gave us. But this one now, they are giving us two promises. One from upload photo, the other one from create user. Right? And look at what they said here. They say, knowing that the functions in utils.js, that's this function and this function, return promises. So we're expecting two promises. One from upload photo, the other one from create user. They now say, use the prototype below to collectively resolve all promises and log what? Body, first name, and last name. Now, this is the function they say we should use to resolve the promise. So let me copy it. Let me take it to our file. So I'm going to bring it down here. And why I'm bringing it down here is that we need all these ones inside of this, our function. So all of these two must have to come before this. And you can actually remove this export too. But whether you remove it or not on this environment, it does not matter. It will still work. So now if you check what they ask us to print out, body, first name, last name. Now if we come back, you find out that we have the body from the upload photo function, and we have what? The first name and last name from the create user. Now from here, you can tell that this function is actually returning a promise, and also this function is also returning another promise. So that means we are expecting two promises, right? And they say we should handle all of them. So now if we come back to our notes, these are notes, you find out that here I talked about Promise API, which is also known as static methods of promise. Do you get? Now if you check, the first one on the list is Promise.all. Next, Promise.allSettled, Promise.race, Promise.any, Promise.resolve, and like that. So now, since they want us to resolve all the promise there are plenty, and they want us to resolve all. In this case, or in this situation, this is actually what we are supposed to use, because this function, what this function does is that it resolves all the promises. So now this is the method we are going to use. So let's go back to our coding environment and let's see what they are saying here. So of course we are returning body, first name and last name. So coming back here, now these methods, one other thing, each of these method, what they accept is an object iterable. And I believe you all know what an object iterable is in JavaScript. Now if you are talking of an object iterable, array is an object that is iterable. Iterable simply means something that you can iterate. And of course, you know, array, you can iterate, move from one value to another. So it means that what we are going to do here, first of all, we need to get the promise from here and also the promise from here. And as we get them, we need to now do something, which is what? Put them into an array. So it all depends on how you want to do it. There's no particular way of doing that. You understand? You can decide to get each of them individually before you put them into an array, whatsoever one you want, right? So here now, let's first get it. So const promises equal to, now I want to get the two. The first one is what? Upload photo. Of course, if you call the function, what is going to return to you is the promise. If you want to confirm, what you can do, you can call upload photo here, and then you see the result you get is a promise. So I will call it here, and then the second value or the next one is also create user. Then you call it just like here. Now if I decide to call the function create user, you see that what I'm going to get is the returned promise value. So you can see it. So I will remove this to avoid distraction, and this. Good. So now we have gotten both promises inside of an iterable, which is inside of an array. Now to check whether you are correct, you can simply call promises here and see the outcome. Okay, it's not showing, so it means I need to console.log it. So console.log. That's how I used to program. I test my code at every point in time, most especially in a situation where I'm not too sure. Okay, good. So let me ask a question. Why do you think we are console logging the promises here and it's not showing?
I think you have to call you didn't call the function.
Okay. So let me do this and let's see. You see that nothing happens. So thank God we even observed this. Now if you remember, you know we talked about consuming a promise. So normally, ordinarily, outside of the function producing the promise, right? If you are using it in another if you want to use it inside another function, you won't be able to access the value of that promise directly until you make use of any of these promise API. So now for this one, since we are having more than one promise, you know, I told you we have to use Promise.all. So now I'll come here. Here's our code. Now we have gotten all the promises here. The next thing now is, did they ask us to return it? Let's be sure. What did they say? Okay, this is what they asked us to return. Like, okay, collectively resolve all promises and log. Okay, they say we should log this. Okay, so now we'll come here, isn't it? Then we'll put Promise.all. Now what are we passing? This is what we are passing. Promises. 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 Right? So okay, no wonder. So let's call, sorry, see, I've even forgotten. Let's call the function. No wonder that thing did not console log. God, I was not thinking. We are not calling the function. So here I'm going to
Yeah, that
call.
was what the other guy said.
Okay. I did not even hear it too. Sorry. So now let's console log it first to be sure. Sorry, I did not hear very well. Promises. Now you can see here, let me extend this. Now you can see that we now have an array of 2 promises. This is the opening array, this is the closing array. This is the first promise which we got from this one, status and body, and this is the second promise which we got from this one. So now from here, to resolve everything, now remember I said we use Promise.all, and then we pass in the iterable promises. Now what did they say we should do? They say, okay, in this file blah blah, knowing that the function in this return promises, use the prototype below to collectively resolve all promises and log body, first name, last name to the console. So when we say resolve, how can we resolve this promise? So how can we resolve the promise?
Sorry, Rich. I was distracted a bit.
Okay. Now, you know, they say we should resolve all these promises. Now we have the promises here, Promise.all, which is expected to resolve it, right? Promise.all. So now, how can we like resolve all this? Now, if you remember, okay, I think somebody wants to say something.
I think we can put we I don't know even if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Can put dot resolve.
Okay. I don't know. I'm struggling to hear you. I don't know if I'm the only one.
No, you're not. I know the year or two.
Our question I record.
Okay.
Also, I was saying I think we can put dot resolve
Okay.
and the text inside it.
Okay. That's good. That's beautiful. Okay. Now, remember. Do you remember what we did here? You know, here they've given us the promise already, and it's in creating a promise that you either resolve or reject. Here they have given us the promise already, but how were we able to now use the promise? Is by what? Consuming it. And how do we consume it? We use the then method to consume the promise when it is being resolved. We use the catch method to consume the promise when it's being what? Rejected. And then we say finally, irrespective of what happened, finally we always display. So also here too, they have already created the this thing, promises. This one has created his own, this one also has created his own, right? So the only thing we need to do is to consume the resolved promises, and before we can consume it, we need to consume all the promises at once. So this one will help us bring in all the promises together, and then we need to consume it. So what are we consuming it with?
I think it's dot 5 dot 3 dot 10.
Beautiful. So now we now use dot then, isn't it? Now this dot then, remember what they say they talked about here. They say we should what? Log. What are we logging? Body, first name, and last name to the console. So anytime you see log to console, what comes to mind? Console dot what? Dot log. Are we getting it? So now we have console dot log. Now the first thing, of course, since we are taking in custom values, we have to use our string literal. Now the first one says body, the second one says first name, the third one says what? Last name. Of course, if you look at this, when we console.log promise, right, you can see that this one and this one is inside of what? Is inside an array.
I have a question.
Okay.
It doesn't even concern the coding or what. Are you recording?
Yes, I am. Look at it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Hope you will share it on the group.
Yes, definitely.
Because my net. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Even that of yesterday, it's just that I've been quite up and doing today, so that's why. Even that of yesterday, I'll work on it, and also today, and then I push everything to the group.
Okay, thank you.
No problem, you're welcome. So now let's do something. What are we doing first? Let's remove this, right? And then let's log out. This is returning what? Let's see first name. Let's even try and log out just first name and see what we are going to have. So here I'll use $, then this string, and then let's say first name. So it says first name not is not defined. I'm thinking. Okay.
Supposed to like maybe assess it as
So let's try something, right? Let's say we are expecting a parameter from these ones, and then let's name the parameter resolve, right? And then here now let's console log, let's say resolve at index 0. I just want to try something. Now what is it returning? Object. Of course, why is it returning object? It's because of this. We have two objects here. You understand? If we add the third object, let's say name, right? Then an output maybe Gideon. Let's see what will happen. Nothing happened. That's serious. Okay, no wahala. We are still testing. So we have object, right? So is there any way? So what do you guys think? What do you think? What can be done here? Or let me remove this one and console log it straight. Let's see. Then hope I'm not mistaking anything. Resolve. Okay. Good.
I don't think we should resolve.
So
we can just put it.
Okay, I'm listening.
I say there is no need to put the resolve.
Okay.
We can just do it as a arrow function.
Okay.
And then don't put cancel.log. We'll just return the arrow function will return automatically.
Okay. So it means we don't need this console.log. I think that's what you are saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the resolve.
Okay, this one too, we don't need it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and then after that you can put the you can assess the first name and then the last name.
Okay. So how are we?
Okay. How can we? So we want to print the first name.
Yes.
To print the first name. Okay, you can say here.
Can you please again print the promise without them? I
Okay,
just want to see.
okay, let me print it. All right, so print promises. Oh, sorry, when you say print, my mind went
Control.
to Java. I say Java, Python. Yeah, so this is it. This is the result.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yes.
So we are going to say just delete that then
Okay, like
dot
this.
then. Yeah, we can say square bracket
Okay,
index 0.
okay,
Mm, no, we can say square bracket index 0. Hey, I don't know. Square bracket index 0.
I love this.
I'm lost.
I love this. Now, the reason why I say I love this,
I'm
right?
lost.
The reason why I say I love this, you understand? While I was
Yeah.
experimenting with the code, I did the same thing, and then I was not getting any result. But then, and I realized that, right? You agree with me that there's a difference between, okay, let's say something like this, and permit me to come up with this code, right? Don't mind me. So let's say maybe name Gideon, and then let's say class, let's say 300, right? Then comma,
Mm,
let's say another name, let's say Emmy, and then class, let's say 500, isn't it? Now if we now call obj, now there's a difference between having this and having this. Now can somebody tell me, what do you think is the difference between what we are having here and what we are having here?
I think the first one we are having the array of objects. Yeah, I think the both one having the array of object, and then the first one it's having the object, it's having
or
the
or let me do it this way. Let me put the same code, status 200, then body, let's say it says photo dash profile dash 1, right? So and then the second one, now it says first name, then first name. No wonder, is this guy that mama was in Python. Hope he's not the one mama in us in JavaScript again. This Gualaume guy. So now, can somebody look at these two and tell me what is the difference between what we have here and what we have here? Wait, hope my network have not gone off. Okay, thank God.
I think we are having the array of promises and then the array of objects.
Beautiful. I love that
Yeah.
response. Now, if you look at the
Yeah, the
difference,
promises are not showing.
good. The promises are not showing. Now, if you look at this one, this is not just an ordinary object, but an ordinary object that is a promise. This is an ordinary object. So, for this ordinary object now, right, for we to access this status is very easy. How can we do that? Object at index 0, because according to this array is at index 0, then dot status. What do you see?
200, the status
200.
code.
You understand? Now, if what we want to access is the first name, where is the first name located? It's located in the second array, right? So it's just for us to do array at index 1 dot first name. And what do we have? We have our first name. But the problem is, for this one, this is not just an ordinary object, but an ordinary object of promise. And that is why we needed first to resolve it using Promise.all. And then to consume it, in order for us to be able to consume this promise, we have to use .then. I don't know if you guys get it. Then this .then that we are consuming, of course, we are expecting a value from this, something that will represent all the values we are getting from here. And what is that thing? Here, I decide to call it resolve. And the reason why I decided to call it resolve was due to what they gave us here. They said resolve all promises. So it means all promises is a resolution. Look at it. This one is resolved. This one too is resolved. So that's why I'm using resolved here. But you can use anything here. Now, this resolve has now become our value. So since it has become our value now, it means if I do resolve at index 0, see what it's going to give me. Let me remove this one. If we do resolve, let me remove this one too. So now if I console log this, console.log, because for it to show, actually I need to return it. So let me even return it so that you guys will see. So it did not ever agree to return. So let's console.log, since return don't want to solve our problem. Now what do you see? You see that we now have our object, pure object, without the word what? Promise. Are you guys following?
Yeah, I can get you.
Good. So now remember, what we need is what? We need three things, which is what? The body, where is it? The body, the first name, and the last name. So for that, right, for we to get this body now is very easy from here. We just put dot body. And then what do we have? You see, we have the name of the body, isn't it? So what is the next thing that we need? Now we can now bring in this our string literal, right? We can now bring it in, and then we can now put this one inside our dollar. Now the next one they say is what? First name. So now, of course, first name will be in under the second array, not that's the array at index 1. So we are going to have resolve at index 1, right, dot first name. Now what do you see? Gualume. Then lastly, for the last name, we have something similar to this too. So this time around, here what we are going to have is last name. So do you see what we have? Photo profile 1, Gualume Salva, which is exactly what we are expected to have here. So I don't know, does anyone have any question concerning what we just did?
I'm good. For me,
You say?
on my side, I'm good.
Okay. So Emmanuel, what about
Benny,
you?
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I said I understand. I'm just taking my time to process it.
Okay, great. So this is the whole thing. So thank God I'm even recording. I'll just try, once we are done with the class, I'll try and put everything together and then send it forth. It's just unfortunate. It seems though, if probably we are chance tomorrow, if you guys will be chance, then we'll just cover classes tomorrow, so that we'll know we'll be starting a whole new week. By the time we start on Monday next week, it will be on a whole new level, because this was almost eating 2 hours already. Yeah. So but it's all
I'll
good.
be free tomorrow though.
Okay, so good. That's beautiful. Even if it's just one person, no problem. At
Yeah,
least
even if no one is available, we could just do it.
and we'll do it, record it, and then push it out. So that is it for this question, to handle multiple promises. So let's look at the next one. It says, at least one thing I believe is quality over quantity. There's no point of maybe we coming spend just 1 hour without gaining anything. So even if it's 3 hours we spend and we gain some things, I think it's far more better. So let's look at this one. It says simple promise, right? It says using the following prototype function, sign up user, first name, last name, that returns a resolved promise with this object. Right? Did they give us any other guide? No, they did not. So now this is where they call the function. Now what do you see they said? That returns a resolved promise. So now let me copy this result. Let me paste it here. And then let me copy the function prototype they want us to use. And then this one I'm going to replace everything here. So what they want us to do is to return a resolved promise with just this value. That's what it means by this one is anything that is being entered here, we occupy this space as the first name. Anything that is being entered here will occupy this place as the last name. So if that's the case, remember we have dealt with something like this to return a resolved promise. How do we do it? Return, right, Promise.resolve. And then remember, what did they say we should return? They say we should return what? A resolved promise of first name and last name. Now if you guys remember yesterday, we did something shorthand for objects. So we can just say here first name, comma, last name. Instead of doing first name column, first name, last name column, last name. Since they are both this is the same as this is the same as this, we can just use the short form, which is this, and then you can see what we have here, which is the same thing with what is here. Look at it. So do you guys understand?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you can still use the second method as well. You remember the second method?
Yeah, but I think this one is short.
Yes. Even me, I prefer this one, honestly, because it's easier for me to remember Promise.resolve than me to be remembering all those plenty things. So let's look at the next one. So the next one says reject the promises. Write and export a function named upload photo. It should accept one argument, which is file name string. The function should return a promise rejecting with an error, and the string file name. Now why you see them use $ here is they want here to be dynamic. That is, whichsoever file is being rejected, the name will be the one that will be shown here. File name cannot be processed. Are you seeing it? So now remember, we already have this function, this upload photo function. We already have it. Are you getting me? We already have it. Yeah. So here, this is the function prototype we are going to use, and here, this is the result you are expected to get. So of course, I'll copy this one, the result. I'll paste it here. Then next, this is the function they expect us to have. So I'll put it here. Now next, what are they saying? Write and export a function named upload photo. This is the function here. It should accept one argument. Of course, this is the argument, which is string. The function should return a promise rejecting. So this one is just like the one we just did right now. There's no much difference between them. The only difference is that the one we did just now is accepting, right, is resolving, but this one they say it should be rejecting. So what are we going to do? We are going to return, right, Promise.reject, and then remember, what did they say we should print in the rejection message? Look at it. File name not be processed, and it should be an error. So it means since it should be an error, we are going to first create an error object using new error, and then we are going to pass in into the error. Now since we are supposed to pass in the original name, file name, we can't just use this one. We have to use our string literal, and then using our string literal, the first one what we are going to have is file name, right? And then the next one, what did the next one say? Cannot be processed. So I'll just copy from here, cannot be processed, and then I'll fix it here. So what do we have here? Rejected. Promise is rejected with the error. What is the error? Gualome, which is the name of the file name, cannot be processed. So do you guys get it? All right, so let's go to the next one. Now it says handle multiple promises. So if you check, this number 6 is more like looking like this one in disguise. But what is the difference? This one is handle multiple successful promises, whereas this one says what? This one just say handle multiple processes. So this one is trying to tell you whether it's a success or is a failure, whether it's a resolved promise or a rejected promise, handle it. Why this one is saying all these promises you are handling, they are all resolved promises. So let's check. Now it says import this from this, sign up user from this, right? And then upload photo from this. So there are two things we are going to import. So I'll go to my terminal now and locate both this function from this file and this function from this file. So 4 and 5, right? So let me go to my terminal, and then let me cd desktop backend promise. Yes, so I'll cut 4 and I'll cut 5 so that I can get the functions. So these are the two functions. I'll copy them, right? This for the 4, and then where is the 5? And this for the 5. So I'll copy it too. This for the 5, right? Good. So now we have the 2, both the 4 and the 5. Now let's go back to our question. So we have this, both this function and this function. Now sign up user, upload photo. Look at it. Sign up user, upload photo. So now it says write and export a function named handle profile signups. It should what? Accept 3 arguments. What are the 3 arguments? First name, last name, file name. So now let's create this function. So we'll come down, function this, right? They say it's accepting what? First name, last name, and then file name, right? Those are the 3 things. Of course it's a function, so we need to open a function block for it. So first name, last name, file name. You can see the function should call the 2 other functions. Are you seeing it? This is a function, this is another function. Now they say this function should now call both this function and this function. So right, when the promises are all settled, are you seeing it? You see, it was specific, all settled. It should what? Return an array with the following what? Structure. Now what is the structure? Status and value. So now if you check these 2 functions, right, you find out that the both of them, one is resolving and one is rejecting. This one is resolving and this one is rejecting, right? Good. Now in fact we can even rewrite this one. In fact, let's even rewrite itself. Let's rewrite it using the simple syntax. Dot reject, then remove this new. Good. So promise.reject, new error, file name cannot be processed. Good. So now back to this. So if you look at, there was a specific keyword they used when the promises are all resolved, are all settled. So if we go back to our list of promises API, you can see that there's one other one called Promise.all settled. Now, if your promise is resolved, it has been settled. If it's rejected, it has also been settled. So far, it has been processed. Whether success or failure, it has been settled. That's what it means. So now, to use this one, you pass in, you do Promise.all settled. So we'll go back to our code, right? Here now, remember, what did they say we should do? We should call these two functions inside of this our function. This one, I will remove this because in this case I don't need it here. So now it means that first of all, we need to bring all the promises together and put them into an iterable, because you know all this array method, where is it? All these ones, you know, I told you guys already, they all make use of, or they accept value of object iterable, because they are meant to handle more than one set of promise. So now, as a result of this, we are going to create a variable const promises. The variable will be the one to get all our promises for us, and then we'll put it inside a list. Now we are going to call this function. Now if you look at this function, we can't just call, unlike the one we did before, you know, the function does not accept any parameter, so we just call the function direct. But this particular one actually accepts two parameters. So in calling it, we have to pass in the two parameters is accepting. So we'll bring it in here. First name, last name, last name. Then the second one, we'll bring in the second function too. We'll call the second one. Now the second one too accepts a parameter called file name. Of course, you see this one too have file name. So we'll call it here with the parameter it accepts, which is file name. So now from here, we are sure. So let me copy the example they gave here so that we can always run it. So now we can be sure. How can we check? What is it showing? What did I do wrong here? In promise error, this cannot be processed. Okay, I think it's a normal thing. It's because of this one that is being rejected. So now let's do something. Let's console.log our promises and see what we are going to have. So you can see we now have the two values inside our array. So we are on a safe side. So I will remove this. So now let's check. What did they want us to do? They say when the promises are all settled, it should return an array with the following structure when it has been settled. So now back to this. Now how can we settle this array? Remember, I've shown you the API we are supposed to call, which is what? Promise.all.settled. That's all the promise. Now what are all the promise? All the promise here are contained in this variable. So we'll have promises dot what? All settled.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. This one, wait, see me. Yes, it should be like this now, Abi. This is how we do it now. Is it like this or like this? Okay, sorry, it should be this. Normal promise. Then here, inside there should be the promises want to settle. So I think it should be like this, yes. See me now, I want to forget how to call API. So let's see what they want us to do. Now, this is what they want us to return. That's for each of them, we should return the status and we should return the value. So let me ask, what do you think we should do, or how can we achieve that? Let me open the code.
Sorry, what was your question?
Okay, now this is it, right? They say that here, where is it? Here, they say we should settle when the promises are all settled, right? It should return an array with the following structure. Now, it should return this array with this following structure when it has been resolved. So let's try something, right? And then what are we going to try? When they say when it has been resolved, isn't it? So let's do this. Let's say now I want to ask, in this case, right, are we using then?
Yeah, I think so.
Are we using then?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's use then and see the result we are going to get. So we have dot then, right? And then this then should take in something. Let's say result, right? And then what we are doing, it should now console.log. Let's console.log the results and see what we are going to have. So you can see status fulfilled, value this status, but according to them now, look at what they want us to just return status and value, because this first one is having status value, this second one is having status reason. So but them now, they want it in such a way what we should return is just status value. If the status, now if you look at this one, when the status is fulfilled, we have value, but when the status is rejected, what do we now have? We have a reason. So it means
we have to specify in there.
good, we have to specify it using a logic. Now how can we specify it? Of course, that's where our conditional statement comes in. All right. Wait, hope we are okay.
I just have to watch the recorded video.
So it have to return the whole object
Yes.
or the
So
we
okay.
you said it have to return the array of objects that
Yes.
have status and value.
Okay. So I'm thinking of two things here. Now what are those two things? I can as well create an empty array here, right? I can say const new info, right here, and then what will I do? I can say okay, for const res in result, right? If res dot status is equal to for field, isn't it? Then new info dot append. What is he appending? Status, right? Okay, res dot status, comma, okay, here they talked about what? Status and value. So let me just, so status will be res dot status, then value will be res dot value, right? If res dot status is equal to fulfilled, then else if res dot status is equal to rejected, right? New info dot append is what? The status will be res.status, and then the value will be res.reason, right? So then this is where we formed the array, the new array, which is on this line. After, so this is after this. So now we are going to return, let me see, sorry, okay, this is for this one here. Okay, this for this. Please let me increase this one so that I'll be sure. The lines are confusing me. Good. So this one here is for this one. This is the closing. This is the opening and closing block for this one. So, and I created this one outside of the for loop, and this one I think is the opening and closing for the for loop. So immediately after the for loop, I will return the array new info. So what do we have? Okay, let me remove this one. It's not showing anything. So let me console.log new info here so that I'll be sure. Is it append? What is the array method for adding something to a listing? Is it append or?
Yeah, it's append.
It's append, right?
It's
Yeah.
push.
Okay.
It's push.
Push.
Okay, it's
Wait.
push.
So array, yeah, push.
Okay. Because I know
No, append, I think that's for...
okay, for JavaScript.
No, append is for...
For Python.
Yeah, I guess. Or Golang. I've forgotten.
Okay, let me confirm something. Console.log res. Let me be sure. Okay, no wonder. So this in is actually getting the index and not the content. So is in, you know, we have 2 4 off. So let me try this. Beautiful. So now, right, you can see status rejected, value is not returning. No, this right, this one is directly under. Okay, I think it should move down. Then what is happening? If status, what is happening? Console.log res, right? Yes, so this is the first one. Status is fulfilled. This one, status is rejected. So if I say res.status, yes, we have fulfilled, we have rejected. So this is it now. Fulfilled. Okay, you see the spelling error. This one is double L. This one I use single L. So that's why. So now look at what we have. Status fulfilled, value, we have this. Why for this second one too? Status rejected, value, we have this. So